OdiseIA, el Observatorio del Impacto Social y Ético de la Inteligencia Artificial presenta Voces de OdiseIA, su videopodcast oficial, dentro del proyecto CAIRE, y gracias al apoyo de la iniciativa digital Futures de Google.org. Sigue a Voces de OdiseIA en YouTube y Spotify. Conoce nuestro trabajo en odiseia.org y suscríbete a nuestros perfiles de redes sociodigitales en LinkedIn, iUS e Instagram. Y ahora, con su propia voz, nuestro anfitrión, Frank Scandell.
Una vez más, aquí en Voces de OdiseIA, cruzamos el Océano Atlántico una vez más a los Estados Unidos de América, y ahí en el estado de Arizona, precisamente, está un amigo de esta casa con quien vamos a tener una conversación en idioma inglés. Está Matthew James Bailey, y así entonces empezamos con la conversación en inglés. Matthew, welcome back to Voces de OdiseIA. Thank you very much for being here, my friend.
Good to be back, Frank. It's always good to spend time with you. I always enjoy talking to you, my friend.
Thank you. Likewise. Well, and this is about a white paper that is really something that you published, I believe it was May or June this year. Is that correct?
Back June, I think it was. Yeah, June, I think it was. Yeah.
Indeed, yes. Okay, so for all the viewers and listeners, there is a link on the description where you can access these. It's only in English, as I understand. I read it in English. But we're in the age of AI, so I am sure AI can help you as well translate it to another language. All right.
Sure.
Yes. Well, I'm talking to the viewers, of course, and yeah. Okay. But so we're living that kind of era right now. So basically, and based on this white paper, Matthew, what was that moment of revelation, per se, that led you to conceive what seems to be a universal framework for ethical AI that respects all forms of life, not only humans? That's quite curious, yes.
Well, first of all, artificial intelligence should respect all realms of life and all expressions of life. That is a fundamental principle that AI should honor. I spend a lot of time in nature and meditation and listening to what is the nature of reality? How does life function in the nature of reality? And how can we thrive in the nature of reality? As well as actually looking at how humanity itself has evolved during the nature of reality with the creation of different nations, cultures, societies, spiritual traditions. And then ask the question, how does artificial intelligence fit into the nature of reality in a benevolent way without messing it all up? So I wanted to come at it from a universal point of view, because people like Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, they talk about AI in the nature of reality a little bit. And I wanted to go further than their thinking in order to come up with a thesis which I think will revolutionize our world in the age of artificial intelligence. And so humanity, life, and AI itself move forward together holistically in the nature of reality.
Okay, it's
there we
because
go, right?
exactly it's quite a surprise, because one doesn't listen to these kinds of holistic and total approaches. What AI should mean to all of us. There is this what seems to be the technical centerpiece. This exposition that you do on your white paper. It seems like a metaphor suggesting this replicable, adaptive, ethical code structure, and you call it the ethical AI genome. Trademark, by the way. I saw the trademark sign.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Wonderful, yes. It seems that this concept likely draws from both biological system theory in computational architecture. Explain to us, or precisely explain the concept and why you consider it indispensable core of your proposal.
Yeah, so I actually wrote about the ethical AI genome. I mentioned it in my first book, Inventing World 3, and NASA, when we did the experimentation with NASA, and I was a visiting scholar at NASA, I wrote about the ethical AI genome, and I experimented with it, and I wanted to go further. And so why would I say there needs to be a genome? Well, basically is that if we look at human biology, we have these remarkable 3 billion base pairs, right? And the groups of base pairs create the human form, right? These base pairs create the human form, right? All life. And when we look at the different pairs of the genome, for example, to create the eyes, right? The eyes are created, but your eyes are created differently to my eyes in terms of shape, texture, color, and other things. The same with ears. The same with arms, legs, right? We all have these features, biological features, but they're subtly different. So when we look at ethical artificial intelligence working with the different groups, the spiritual traditions, the cultures, the nations, they all have a worldview of what it is to be in the nature of reality. What is it to be human? What's our relationship with the family? What's our relationship with the environment? What's our relationship with each other? What is our relationship with life itself? And that's what we call a worldview. And so each group will have a different set of principles, ethics, values, and morals around their purpose in the nature of reality. In essence, it's a genome. It's their own genome for their understanding of the nature of reality. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So what that means is that we can have a common framework for the genome, i.e., what is it to be human in the nature of reality? But Hinduism or indigenous tribes or Judaistic traditions would have a subtly different view of what it is to be human in the nature of reality. Then we look at our relationship with God, creator, the universe, the source, the spiritual aspect. Each one of those will have different subtle different views of our spiritual purpose and our spiritual design. When we look at the family, some may be more traditional, some may be more modern, but there's still a common area of family. Who are we in the nature of reality as humans? What's our relationship with the environment? What's our spiritual view of who we are? These are common areas that create a worldview. And so when we have a genome, we can have each area encoded with the worldview of each of these cultures and traditions, and effectively that becomes their genome. We all have a common framework across the world, but how we encode that genome is basically different because we all have a different worldview of who we are in the nature of reality. Does that make sense? So effectively,
yes.
It's adaptive because our worldview isn't static, it's evolving continually. So we need an evolving set of mathematics where the worldview of a particular group can evolve and not remain static. It needs to adapt to subtle changes. So, for example, in the age of artificial intelligence, does the worldview change because of the age of AI? For example, around our relationship with the environment, which is changing all the time. You know, we may focus on particular areas of partnership with the environment, maybe around looking at natural agriculture, maybe looking at more holistic and traditional views of farming. Others may look at more big ag and more kind of a modern or a modern approach to farming. So the point is that we need to be able to have a common framework in which each culture and group can encode their principles of what it is to be in the nature of reality. That common framework allows us to see the commonality and the differences, but it also allows us to evolve in our own sovereignty in the groups, in our relationship with artificial intelligence, and AI follows that evolutionary path.
It reminds me so much. About 25 years ago, I read a book and it was the 20th anniversary of that book.
Right.
Yes, it's exactly. It's quite from the 80s, actually. The book's name was The Spectrum of Consciousness by Ken Wilber. There was yes, had his different archetypes of consciousness all in one framework. So it reminds me of that. This next question touches upon our work here in OdiseIA, actually, because we recently became a recognized official civil society organization by UNESCO. So, because of you have mentioned of UNESCO frameworks for indigenous knowledge, of course, and these systems to protect basically indigenous knowledge. How does the cultural and spiritual sovereignty of each nation integrate into this global AI system? How do they do that?
Well, first of all, is that we don't want one artificial intelligence. We want many artificial intelligence. We want many ethical AIs. Why do we want that? It's very simple. Because we have many groups, right? There's over 4,000 languages that are spoken today, right? We have many different types of societies, many different types of cultures, many different types of spiritual traditions, right? Yes. So 6.4 billion people have a spiritual faith in our world. That's over 80%, right? Yes. So what we want is a common framework that is global, but encoded at a local level. So local innovation takes place. We move from centralized to decentralized partnership with artificial intelligence. So actually, common framework, but curated locally. And so we have many different ethical AIs around the world, all working at a group level or even an individual level. But because we're based on a common genome, a common framework, we can then measure and see the differences and the commonalities, and that then allows us to really collaborate and to actually start to come forward together as a global collective where we work on those things that are common.
In your vision, there is this concept, of course, I seem to have read, paradise plan, okay? In AI programming and governance. Could you explain what that is for those of us who are more on the technical side, right? For example, exactly. So what does that mean? Because it could mean many things.
Right, of course it could. So, excuse me.
Sure.
No nation, society, or spiritual tradition, culture has a paradise plan for themselves. There's no paradise plan. And there's certainly no paradise plan for artificial intelligence or paradise plan for humanity with AI, right? So the paradise plan is an invitation to nations, cultures, spiritual groups to ask some fundamental questions. Who are you? What's your purpose? And how do you want to thrive in the nature of reality? This is really important. We don't want to keep on fumbling forward in the darkness. We want to take authority. We want to basically have a vision, and we want to basically create that North Star in which we're heading. And so the Paradise Plan helps us to think about these existential questions, these fundamental questions of what it is to be human. How do we thrive? And the Paradise Plan is a simple set of statements around how does a group thrive in the nature of reality. And so once we do that Paradise Plan, then our systems start to be shaped to support the evolution of that Paradise Plan, and then AI can fit in as a partner in order for that Paradise Plan to happen.
How do you envision the structure of in the creation of a global think tank of ethical innovators? In what could be the, for example, the examples that you can provide that we have nowadays, so to serve as an example for this future global AI ethics or global think tank?
Yes. So Dr. J.J. Hurtak, he's a double doctor. He wrote this, that we've been talking about launching a global think tank. And I think that what we need is new enlightened leadership in the age of AI, a new set of enlightened pioneers that can start to understand what is the purpose of humanity in the nature of reality, what's our universal context, what's our North Star, and come at it a very new way of thinking about what does it mean to be human and how does AI fit into that. What we see are very old ways of thinking that are trying to effectively use existing systems to move humanity forward, and existing systems simply are not working. We need a fresh look at humanity, a fresh look at our world, a fresh look at what does it mean to be human, a fresh look at how do we thrive in profit, a fresh look at redefining profit, a fresh look at well-being. We need to basically consider a new type of enlightened think tank, a group pioneers that really take a refreshing and a complete new look at what does it mean to be human. And this is not new. So the Greeks had the Plato school, a bunch of philosophers that basically inputted into the Greek Empire around what does, some of these big conversations around democracy. Democracy came out of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. We used to have these places of philosophers that used to be free thinkers that took a fresh look at everything, right? We used to have that. The Egyptians used to have that, right? The Mayans used to have that. And what we don't have today is this kind of model, civilization model we used to have, which is free thinkers that are free from the system, that basically are re-looking at how do we thrive as a species? How do we thrive as humanity? How do we move forward into a new enlightened society, a new place of well-being, a new place of becoming as human beings? And so that's what I'm inviting, is basically a relaunch of those old schools of free thinking for the benefit of our world.
What concrete contributions from quantum physics in this case? It's quite something because of basically quantum computation nowadays.
Sure.
Quantum physics and thinkers like David Bohm, for example, or Erwin Schrödinger, and even Roger Penrose, who has been, by the way, he has been speaking about AI. I remember having watched that. Yes. How do their contributions support their framework?
Well, first of all, is that people like David Bohm, Schrödinger, and Penrose, which are quoted in the white paper, they all came to they all ended up understanding that consciousness is everything, and they started to understand that there's a universal place for humanity, and there's a universal consciousness in action. So even though they were looking at breaking through in our understanding of the nature reality through the quantum, they all came to the conclusion that actually there is if you like, a spiritual or a metaphysical aspect to how humanity, who humanity is, and there's a metaphysical aspect to the universe itself. They all came to that conclusion. Excuse me. Sure. Now, Sir Roger Penrose is a genius. And
yes,
he wrote, what was it, The Emperor's New Clothes or something like that, a book on AI. Brilliant book. Back in the 80s, right? And it's still relevant today, right? And Sir Roger Penrose is a genius man, very sensible, very, very, very calm in his demeanor.
Quite contrarian as well, yes.
Right, exactly, right. I've watched most of that, his interviews. And basically he's saying, look, we don't fully understand the quantum stuff. We don't really understand how quantum really works, although we've got data points around the observation principle, although that seems to be blown out the water, because actually it's not about observation, it's intent of observation, whether it's a particle or a wave. Actually, there's some new research coming in. So my point is this, is that people like Sir Roger Penrose are very sensible. They are geniuses in cosmology, physics, and other domains related to the quantum. And Roger Penrose is saying, he thinks that consciousness is a quantum phenomenon. And he's right. And so when we look at transhumanism and this idea of uploading our consciousness into the machine, he's saying, well, first of all, unless we understand quantum properly, we won't understand consciousness. So we don't even know what we're uploading to the machine. And then the next question is, if you're looking at uploading consciousness to the machine, are you looking at uploading the soul of an individual to the machine? At which point then you're now looking at a creator-God conversation around the majesty of consciousness itself. And is it possible to actually even understand it? Because it is let's just say, a divine created phenomenon, gift that we all have. So people like David Bohm and people like Sir Roger Penrose and many others, they basically came to this conclusion that consciousness is a universal phenomenon. Humanity is part of that, and there is so much more for us to understand before we can even consider this idea of putting consciousness in the machine. And I actually think that, personally, that is a misstep. I think that consciousness, in my own metaphysical teachings and exploration, is a beautiful gift. And I think that we need to be careful not to over computerize everything, Frank, and see everything as AI and everything as something we're trying to control. Why not just enjoy the gift of consciousness instead of trying to control consciousness?
Well, this is definitely where technoscience, as I like to call it,
right,
where technoscience meets the philosophy of mind, basically.
That's right.
Amazing. Okay. You also mention in your white paper, it's this transformational psychology, of course, where there are names like Carl Gustav Jung or Campbell or Teilhard de Chardin, for example. How can these different psychology, we're all used to clinical psychology, how can these different form of psychology instruct AI to align with human evolution?
Yeah, so first of all is that we have to accept that humanity is metaphysical. And there's overwhelming evidence. I'll happily debate anybody on the stage around this. The fact is humanity is metaphysical, okay? And so we need to ensure that context is understood by artificial intelligence and is honored by that at a personal and a group level and a global level, right? We don't want the metaphysical to be interfered with, right? Because that would violate the non-aggression principle. When we look at people like Carl Jung, who's an absolute genius, right? He spoke about the union of light and shadow. And Campbell and Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, one of the greatest philosophers of US philosophers of our time, he wrote about the fact that people go through this hero's journey, this journey of transformation, right? And Jung itself would talk about a journey of transformation where effectively the individual, in simple terms, moves from tension into oneness, where the shadow and the light become integrated. That's what he taught. And so the important thing for artificial intelligence to understand is that we're a psychological being. And it's important for artificial intelligence to understand that we have both, if you like, light and shadow aspects to ourselves. And both are just as important for each other. You can't have shadow without light. You cannot have light without shadow. And
indeed,
Campbell taught that basically the shadow is our greatest lover. It is what takes us through trials and tribulations into growth. It actually challenges us at, Jung would say, in the mind. Campbell would say it's more esoterical. But the shadow challenges us to go into growth through trials and tribulations. That's part of the growth paradigm of humanity. It is not through light. It is through shadow that we grow. And so it's important for artificial intelligence to understand that we have this shadow aspect, and that shadow aspect is part of the soul's choice for an individual to evolve. And so my point is very simple. We have these shadow and light aspects. We are naturally transforming every single moment. We have this infinite potential to grow from limited into unlimited, right? And so AI needs to honor that, if you like, that universal architecture within us that grows.
You said we are psychological beings. When I've been asked before what AI is, for example, and to put it in simple terms, I have answered sort of AI is simply the mathematization of human psychology. That's it. It's human psychology in numbers. So
that's an interesting way. There's a new paper that came out from, I think it was neuroscience. It was from some reputable collection of brain scientists, and they basically are saying that the brain should no longer be looked at as a machine. It is what they're saying is the brain is so complicated, and in the way it operates, we still don't understand fully how the brain works. And so looking at the brain as a computational architecture, this latest research is saying that is a mistake. However, to your point, the idea that there are mathematical algorithms that are operating within the brain at a psychological level, that's a reasonable thing to say, because that's what we understand so far. But actually, it might be far more complicated.
It would be chaotic. That would be the word, yes.
Well, it may well be. You never know. Chaos theory is very interesting.
Chaos theory, yes, indeed. There are key contributions to your roadmap, and you mentioned these people in your white paper. In this case, Eric Schmidt. You already mentioned that. A person that I actually follow right now on LinkedIn because she's absolutely amazing. Her name is Kathleen Bartfay-Walcott. Absolutely amazing. And one of my old-time favorites, Buckminster Fuller, of course. What key contributions have they made to your roadmap?
Well, Cotty is a genius, and she's cracked the codes of data sovereignty. And Cotty and I have been collaborating for years, and she's really stepped up, and courageously too, because basically people don't really understand how the current systems work of data governance and data privacy. Data privacy is actually a hijack, of your sovereignty, and under the guise of benevolence. Sorry, buddy, that's not going to go down very well with many people, but it's a hijack.
Indeed.
And so what she's looked at the fundamental. So first of all is that, do we have the rights to our data? And the answer is yes. As sovereign beings, right, we have the rights to all our data. We are creators in action. We're creating data. It's part of our, if you like, our expression in the nature of reality, and we should have ownership over that. And so what she's done is she's looked at the meeting point between the human and the digital system, and given ownership to the human before the digital system takes place. Now, before, what happened is that when the human interacts with the digital system is in control and pulls data from the human without their consent, without their knowledge. What she's done is change the conversation where the human actually has full control of the data that flows into the system. We have full knowledge where it goes, and we get paid for our data. We have control over our creation and the nature of reality. And she's doing remarkable. She's working in healthcare. She did an experiment with Pink Floyd, right, in the music industry.
That sounds very good indeed.
So Cotty Walcott has basically returned sovereignty of data back to the individual. The individual gets paid. The individual has control, and And so effectively, she's rewritten the partnership between the digital world and those organizations and the human being itself. And she is absolutely extraordinary. And it follows the universal law of non-aggression, which is, don't steal my data, don't steal my mind, don't steal my body, do not try and control me. I have every right to be in control of my expression in the nature of reality.
Many out there, Matthew, would like to test the practical viability of your vision.
Sure.
Which is okay. What are the most, in order to convince them, of course, what are the most urgent legislative, technical, philosophical challenges to prevent this mission from becoming merely nominal ethics?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you scale? How do you get interest in this?
There you go.
And there's a strategy that I have in place, right? So where do you start? Well, you start with the major AI companies. So there'll be there will be engagement with the major AI companies around us,
Okay.
and that will be important for them to take a look at it. I'm pretty sure that it's on the money, and so what I'm looking for there is interest and adoption, right? At least experimentation. It's like, let's create a sandbox. Let's create this ethical AI architecture. Let's create the genome. Let's go into a sandbox. We're not short of money at all, and let's experiment with it and see what happens. That's kind of what I'm really looking for there. When it comes to government, then the conversation's slightly different. The conversation is one understanding that ethical intelligence governs the nature of reality, and ethical AI is actually the correct terminology and approach to artificial intelligence in the nature of reality. And then understanding that each group and culture and spiritual tradition has sovereign rights, and therefore there should be many ethical AIs for those different groups, as well as a national AI, right?
Yes.
With government, it's more around looking at the policy in order for this to happen and the legislation. With the AI companies, it's more about action and experimentation with it.
Okay. And finally, Matthew, if you could deliver one compelling message to precisely government, spiritual leaders, corporations, what would be the unavoidable call to action for this 21st century?
Well, they certainly need to read the white paper, and I'm happy to talk with them about how to build their paradise plan. I've already done it with a number of institutes already. The Shumei Institute, they have 100 institutes around the world, they're natural ag and other things. So I'm happy to work with the spiritual institutes on how to do this. I think the key thing for the spiritual and religious institutes and the cultural groups, let's not forget culture, that's really important too, is to look at, basically the paradise plan. Look at what is your worldview? What is the purpose of humanity in relation to the environment? What's the relationship with humanity with the global metaphysical context and with creator? What's your relationship with the family? What's your relationship in business? What's your relationship with science? It's important that they start to document their paradise plan. And in doing this, that will take them back into the fundamental principles of what their cultural, spiritual tradition's about. It will challenge them to remember their roots. It will challenge them to reflame, if you like, the passion that started their spiritual or religious tradition. It will bring them alive. And once you've done that, then effectively there's no reason why they can't approach an AI company, or maybe one of the big ones, or maybe a smaller one, it doesn't really matter, to start to experiment with this ethical AI architecture and ethical AI genome, just to see the differences between how ChatGPT or Grok or Claude operate now, and with the encoding of the ethical AI genome, see how differently it works. And as they start to see the benefits, which they will, because I've played with it, then effectively there's now a path for them to have hope where they can actually advocate for this type of ethical AI for their culture, spiritual or religious group. So, in summary, read the paper, talk to me, happy to help, but start to think about who is humanity in the nature of reality based on your worldview. Let's start to document those principles. Let's start to understand. Let's start to create a North Star for your culture or spiritual, religious tradition or nation. Let's start looking to the future and then inventing AI to move towards that future and creating systems that support that vision towards that North Star.
And basically using that same word, inventing, I remember Inventing World 3.0.
Yeah.
I understand there will be quote unquote, Inventing World 4.0, maybe a new book coming up?
Yeah, there's a new book. I'm way behind on it, but I've written it. It's called AI and Our Divine Spark, and basically I'm uncoding the blueprints of the universe and how AI fits into the nature of reality. And the metaphysical aspect is going to be fundamental to this. And anybody that reads it will realize that metaphysics is just as real as science.
Indeed. So, someone else call it ontology, if I remember correctly.
Sure, I don't mind. Yeah, that's right. Ontology. Yeah.
Ontology. All right. Well, Matthew, it has been as always a fascinating conversation with you on this white paper. That for our viewers and listeners, you have the link on the description, either on YouTube or Spotify. Matthew, thank you very much for being here at Voces de OdiseIA.
Thanks, Frank. It's been great. Namaste.
Namaste.